The SS Eastland was a passenger steamship that operated on the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River. On July 24, 1915, the Eastland was docked at the Clark Street Bridge in Chicago, Illinois, preparing to take around 2,500 passengers on an excursion trip to Michigan City, Indiana. The ship was already over capacity, with many passengers standing on the decks as the crew prepared for departure. At around 7 a.m., the Eastland began to list to one side, causing panic among the passengers. Despite the crew's attempts to correct the list, the ship continued to roll over, and soon after, it capsized in the Chicago River. The disaster happened quickly and many passengers were trapped inside the ship as it capsized. Those who were able to escape found themselves struggling to stay afloat in the water, and many were drowned or crushed by the capsizing ship. It is estimated that around 844 passengers and crew members died in the disaster, making it one of the worst maritime disasters in U.S. history. The cause of the disaster was determined to be the ship's instability due to the overloading of passengers and crew, as well as the fact that the ship's ballast tanks were not properly filled with water. The ship was not designed to carry such a large number of passengers and the weight distribution was not adequate. Additionally, the ship had a design flaw that made it more susceptible to capsizing than other ships of its kind. The disaster also highlighted the lack of safety regulations and oversight in place for passenger ships at the time. The Eastland disaster was a tragedy that had a profound impact on the city of Chicago and the families of the victims. Many of the victims were immigrants and working-class people, who were on the ship for an excursion trip, and the disaster highlighted the social and economic inequalities of the time. The disaster also led to changes in maritime safety regulations and oversight, as well as improvements in ship design and construction to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. The Eastland disaster was felt deeply by the city of Chicago, where the disaster occurred. The city was in mourning for weeks and the disaster was widely covered by the media. Many families were left without a breadwinner and many children were left without parents. The disaster also had a psychological impact on the survivors, many of whom struggled with trauma and PTSD. The Eastland Memorial Society was created to commemorate the victims of the disaster and to educate the public about the importance of maritime safety. The Society has worked to preserve the memory of the victims and to honor their legacy through various initiatives, including the creation of a memorial in Chicago, the preservation of artifacts and documents related to the disaster, and educational programs for students and the general public. The Eastland disaster remains a tragic reminder of the importance of safety and oversight in the maritime industry, as well as the devastating consequences that can result from neglecting these measures. It is a reminder of the lives that were lost, the impact that the disaster had on the families and communities affected by it, and the importance of learning from past mistakes in order to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future.